Okay, good morning, afternoon, evening. Welcome to, I think this is the first episode of the rebranded podcast, which is actually Lawyers Uncharted. It was previously known as Lawyers with Stories. We've undergone a rebranding and just a fine tuning of the podcast. So I'm very happy to have my Zambian colleague, Kaumbu Mwondela, very much senior to me, lots of experience, a very interesting part backstory, which he's going to share with us today. And hopefully, if you find yourself in the same situation, you know you're not alone, and it is possible to be successful even if you have a drastic gear change, such as Kaumbu will illustrate for us through his story. So the aim of Lawyers Uncharted is to highlight people, not necessarily everyone who is successful, because we don't want to present a wrong or a fantastical side of the profession, which our colleagues do very well, by the way. We want to present a very realistic picture, and of course, it means that there's success and there is failure, right? And it's the main objective of the podcast is to let you know that there are different paths into this career, and that the line is not necessarily straight, and what you planned very rigidly maybe in your first year, second year, third year of university, or even in law school, it can all come undone, and you might find yourself making a change that you never anticipated. So this thing called the legal career is not as cut and dried as even university would have us think. So we want to just illustrate that. Hence the name of the podcast changing to Lawyers Uncharted, because everyone's path is one that is unique, and they probably never, for the most part, could have figured it out for themselves or ever thought that they would end up taking that. So I'm going to do less of the talking now, and I'm going to let my colleague introduce himself and give us a background uh, as to where he's coming from and how he ended up where he is today. And then, of course, I will dive into the finer points and ask questions that you might be asking as you listen to this. Colleague, take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to your listeners. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be on your podcast, Lawyers Uncharted. It's a fantastic concept. Perhaps just a little bit about me as you introduced me. My name is Kaumbu Mwondela, and among other things, I practice law and I'm also an international arbitrator. I am admitted to the bar of Zambia, and I practice largely commercial law with a disputes practice, both litigation as well as arbitration, and then of course some transactional work as well. In terms of my backstory, mine I think is a bit of an interesting, strange story. So I grew up as a child being a lover of really being very curious and being a lover of science. I was introduced to science quite early through literature, not so much through experimentation, but through literature, because I read about the, great scientists of yesteryear, Isaac Newton, Alexander Graham Bell, and Thomas Alva Edison, and people like that. And it inspired me to be curious and to love science and the way science would answer questions or seek answers to questions. And so I purposed from a very young age that I was going to have a career in science. And then that coincided with a TV show that your younger listeners may not know, but maybe some of your more middle-aged ones, will relate with. And it was called The Cosby Show. And it had a gentleman called Bill Cosby as the parent. He had a wife called Claire Huxtable. His name was Heathcliff Huxtable. And he was a medical doctor in that show. And his wife was a lawyer. And together they had 5 children. And it was such a great show because, Bill Cosby in that show, he and his family, they modeled a functional family. A family that actually operated as a family and was not your stereotypical black, at least the way it was modeled in the media. you know, black, dysfunctional, absent father, sort of rowdy kids and all sorts of mischief. They were a functional family. And it really, really appealed to me. And so my love for science combined with my love for the Cosby Show set me on the career path of being a medical doctor. So when I went to university, that's what I planned to do. I spent the early part of my years, undergrad and sophomore year, in a science program that would lead up to a medical degree. Along the way, of course, there were various things that I'll urge your listeners to look out for my memoirs because I will tell the stories in detail. But a combination of events, including academic closures, the university closed multiple times for a long time, and really gave me an opportunity to just rethink my career choices. Excuse me. And I thought to myself, given the kind of skills, the kind of gifts that I had, I was blessed to be academically astute. And so I was generally pretty good at most things. But I thought to myself that I had a particular set of maybe special gifts that would make me a good doctor, but a rather excellent lawyer. At least that's what I thought. So I consulted and received some support and made the decision that I was going to change programs. And so I applied to enter the School of Law. And after some toing and froing, I was accepted. And into the School of Law, I went. And I never looked back, Lisa. I enjoyed contract law. I enjoyed tort law. I didn't at the time enjoy civil, it wasn't called civil procedure, but it was a more procedural sort of course. I didn't quite enjoy that too much at the time. I later began to enjoy it, but I enjoyed my programs. I enjoyed the commercial subjects, investment and trade, international trade. I also enjoyed human rights because it provided this framework. And it really resonated with me because I was such a believer, and I still am, a believer in the inherent dignity of all people, irrespective of the boundaries that we choose to draw around ourselves, whatever it is that informs those boundaries, whether it's the color of our skin, whether it is who or what we worship, etc., etc. Name them, name all the isms. And I thought that the human rights framework was fantastic for the actualization of a life of dignity for everybody. So I really enjoyed it. And so graduated from law school with my law degree and immediately went about studying for the bar, to take the bar exams here in Zambia. It was a tough time, I have to tell you. It was a year of really doing nothing else. Nothing else. I didn't have a social life. And I, just being the person that I am, decided to get married during that year. I don't recommend it. Not the not getting married part. The not getting married part was great. But doing that simultaneously with studying for the bar is not a good idea. But there it is. It was a very full and busy year for me. But I took the bar and qualified and began to practice. So I was in private practice for my intern year, if you like. I spent that in private practice and I continued in that practice for another 2 or so years after I qualified and then moved to another private firm that was bigger and more commercial and gave me more of an opportunity to sort of spread my wings and flex my muscles. I did quite a bit of litigation, commercial litigation especially, but a variety. I did family law. I did some family law matters. I did some criminal matters. I did a lot of commercial matters and just was really an advisor to business. And, if it is said that I charted the course of my career, I think it would not be true. I just did the best that I could with what was in front of me at that point. So, I really made my decisions almost from day to day, doing the best that I can at that moment. And the path sort of unfolded in front of me. And yeah, it's been almost 20 years of doing it. And I have not lost steam. I still love what I do. Lisa, that's the 3-minute version.
That's the elevator of the elevator pitch.
Right.
Yeah, I'm finding I'm having to do that quite often these days. Where I'm already a very brief speaker, but people have been wanting to speak to me recently, and it's like I've got to be faster than brief. So it's been. I think it's a nice skill to have in the legal profession. The briefer you
Right,
are, and you can pack everything in, and it's as short as possible. Then that's a superpower that you can have in the legal field.
right,
No, that's the. I think even that short version of what you gave is. I mean, I don't think you could have. There are so many things that we can't foresee, right? Which is something that I try to get to law students, even here in South Africa and international ones, that life will happen, things will happen, and therefore you cannot realistically, rigidly charter your course and your path into the profession. And I think it's very interesting. I've interviewed at least one other colleague that had a start in science, and then actually microbiology, and she made the pivot into law. And of course, one of the points I want to bring out is that waiting period or that time of uncertainty that you spoke about that calls you to think about, is this really what I want to do? I think maybe just speak to that when it comes to students. And a lot of them sit in these periods maybe of waiting for their bar application to be approved, or waiting as we have here for articles, practical vocational training for the attorneys. I'm even waiting after graduation. That's when I tend to get the messages. People have a lot of existential crises once they hit a brick wall. They hit a time of uncertainty, and I always encourage self reflection, self discovery. And in your case, it led to that the career pivot that led you into law. So maybe just speak to that, developing that for young aspiring lawyers, developing that skill or using those times of uncertainty to actually reflect and maybe refine your plan, etc.
right. I think that's fantastic. Look, something, and I remember having this conversation just a few days ago with some young people. I am over 40. All right, let's get that out of the way. The cat is out of the bag. I am over 40, and I often look back and I think to myself, how was I trusted to make such life changing decisions before I was 40? Life changing decisions like choosing a career, life changing decisions like choosing a life partner, if that's what you want to do. Those are big decisions. And yet we often make those decisions before the age of 25. And you think, how equipped are you to make that kind of a decision? Well, that's the way life is. You don't have at 18, 19, 20, right? You barely have any of life's experiences. You're still acquiring a lot of knowledge. It's not strange that you may be uncertain and doubtful of what you should do next, which direction you should go. Are you really cut out for a career in law, or should you be doing something else? It is not strange at all. And I think if anybody tells you different, give them my number. But I think because in our earlier years, we are still even getting to know ourselves. We have seen ourselves respond to different situations, all right, within the limitations of the experience that we have had. When we are exposed to different situations, we see ourselves responding to those new situations and we learn something about ourselves. So that's just to say to my young friend who may be thinking, making career choices and wondering, is law the career for me? Give yourself some grace, my friend. Give yourself some grace. Give yourself the opportunity to explore. I think that the best decisions are made when you have the best quality information in front of you. So that's something that I would urge our younger listeners to do. Get to know what it's actually about. You might have a view of law that has been formed perhaps from the TV series Suits, right? And you think, okay, that's what a legal career looks like. I would say arm yourself with information volunteer. I know it's difficult to get into firms and to get into practices, but to the maximum extent that it is available to you, find out about different practices. What do lawyers actually do? It's not a one size fits all. Some are in the criminal space, some are in the commercial space, some are in the international law space, some are practicing public law. Perhaps they are working in municipalities, they are advising entrepreneurs or manufacturers. They're everywhere and they're doing a variety of things. Get to know so that you have an understanding. And then also get to know yourself a little bit more and ask yourself, is this something that I see myself doing and enjoying to do? Many people are informed by the appearance, the veneer, right? And it looks like, lawyers do so well. They wear nice clothes, they drive nice cars, they're always traveling or whatever. Now, that might be true for some. It's certainly not true for all. So if your attraction to a career in law is the shine, then you may be very disillusioned along the way. So I don't have a bullet for you, but I would definitely re echo the best quality information will inform better quality decisions. So get to know what the profession looks like, all of its varieties and variations, but also give yourself some grace and get to know yourself. You might find that perhaps you are an extroverted character who loves the great outdoors. Perhaps you are an adrenaline junkie and you may not get all of the adrenaline kicks from legislative drafting, for example, right? Which is another area in law where you're sitting there and you're thinking through pieces of legislation and the impact that they're going to have on a particular area or sector, and you are a legislative drafter. It may not work for you, right? I'm not saying it won't, but it may not, because you want to be out there talking to people and interacting and etc. So get to know yourself, get to know what the legal space has to offer, and then trust your instincts, trust your gut. If you have educated your gut sufficiently, it often helps. But also get advice. Get advice. It helps to align yourselves with various sort of mentors and people who are running ahead of you, who may be able to point out some things that you may not see, right? You're not an island and nobody expects you to have all the answers. So, surround yourself with some good company, those that are running ahead, that will be able to speak into your life and advise you. I'll probably leave it there for now, Lisa.
Well, thank you. I think, well, that's one thing I'm a fan of is getting information. So even if you decide against something, you've decided against it in an informed fashion. So I think that's a very universal piece of advice, and I think it has a lot of truth in the legal sphere because you mentioned suits. I think it's interesting. We have a couple of TV references today, and you mentioned that watching the Cosby Show, which I grew up watching. I'm still recently watching some clips from there. Still, as it hasn't aged badly at all.
Right.
It's still relevant, especially for parenting, I think.
Yes.
But you use that to inform your career into the sciences. If people were to use TV shows, legal TV shows, and of course, Suits is a very, very common example. What you did is an example, is a positive example of using a TV show to inform a career choice, which isn't a bad thing, right? Especially in you know, factoring in race and the way this particular race group is always portrayed in the media. And you get a something that goes against that, and it's very inspiring. And you say, hey, I'm of the same color. So if the TV show is saying it's possible, then I can do it. And I think in the same vein as well, like shows like Suits, which I am not a fan of. Admittedly, I used to watch it. It first aired, I think the first maybe 2 or 3 seasons. Quickly I realized is it's just entertainment value. But you'll find a lot of our young ones, they will watch those shows, even like the Law and Order series, and they will base their decisions, or they will factor that into their decision. The very sensationalized, glamorized, mostly unethical portrayals of how law should be handled and managed. They will use that as a tool of information. And I think if maybe I can just put that point to bed. If you're going to use shows, if you're going to use TV, and we know we have a lot of TV on demand these days. And those of you that are out there that watch a lot of legal dramas, and if you're a law student, or you're thinking of studying law, or you're thinking of practicing law at some point, and you're watching those shows, just you can use it as a point of information. It can be a positive thing, but also I would say be wary of the unhealthy portrayals and the wrong portrayals. When you mentioned like knowing yourself, discovering yourself, there may be things in these shows that even make you feel uncomfortable. You can even ask yourself, how would I behave as a lawyer in that situation, under those ethical circumstances? Maybe it's a gray area, and it's very crucial, I think, if you want to be entertained and inspired. That we are able to sort of pick out the good from the bad and use the good to inspire us, use the bad to maybe shape us, challenge us, and say, how would I respond? And I think media and career planning, I think that can be a whole other topic, especially in the legal field. But I mean, it can go either way, and I think it's just the younger generation has got to be just very, very careful as to how they use legal shows to inform their career choices, because we know that that is much easier to consume than, for example, reading a law firm's website, or reading a law firm's blog, or reading a legal journal. It's much easier, it's much more attractive. And we find unconsciously that's the power of media, is that subconsciously, rather, you are affected. You are affected in your choices, and even in your legal ethics, and you might find yourself playing it out. So it's very important for those of you out there that watch a lot of those shows, and you are, indirectly influenced towards law, or even in the practice field. Just be very careful about how that shapes your conduct and your decisions as a professional. And something else I wanted to bring out was this whole idea of sort of merging your passions, or coming to the point where law is something that is, like you said, 20 years later, it's still something we want to do. Um, I think myself included, there are those of us that we come to a certain point, maybe in the practice field, and we're like, we want to move on. And then we find something in the legal field that channels all of our everything that makes us us, right? It channels our personality, our soft skills, our need for adrenaline. So maybe just speak to that, like, because there might be those that get stuck. Like, for example, you still love it, but there might be those that are in it maybe for 20 years, but they're stuck. Or they might be maybe 2 years in, and they realize, what, this is not actually aligning with who I am. So maybe speak to that kind of gray area where you want to move on, you want to find something that aligns, maybe keeps you in the field, maybe takes you away from the field for a season and brings you back. But like, how, as an aspiring, or as I say, baby lawyer, how would how do you advise people to navigate that initial entrance, and then feeling discontent, and then finding eventually where you are passionate to be
Right.
in the field?
Oh, that's a great question, Lisa. That's really a great question. And again, baby lawyers, there is no silver bullet. There is no magic wand. There is just a pilgrimage that we call life. And you are walking it one step at a time, just one step at a time. And the most important step that you make is that next one. That's really it. If we had a crystal ball and we could see around the corner and see what our future held for us, I don't know what our lives would be like. I use the illustration of a pilgrimage or a journey because I think, it might be a bit philosophical, but I think that that's the way life is. I think it is a journey. And when you view it as a journey, then you know that the point in time that you are at is exactly that. It is a point in time. It's not a destination. You have not arrived. You are on your way, right? So if there is a desire to have a career in law, do something about it. As we have said, consult, research, investigate, know yourself. And if you think, yep, that's what I want to do, go for it. Like I did, I went to law school, I studied for the bar. And by the way, I know some good friends of mine, good people, good men and women who have struggled with the bar. All right. There's a colleague I was in class with in law school. We were in law school together and we studied, for the bar together. He did not qualify. And at the time, we had a rule, there was a rule in the Zambian framework that you got 3 attempts at taking the bar. And if you didn't clear all the heads, we had to write 10 exams. They're now 11, right? If you didn't clear all the heads, you didn't pass all the heads, then you were prevented from taking the bar exam for 5 years. So you had to basically do something else and then come back and attempt the exams after 5 years. He went away, came back after 5 years, was unsuccessful, went away again for 5 years. So came back after 10 years. And he only qualified, 10 years after I qualified. Right. Now, that's an example of somebody who, whatever his reasons were, he was persuaded that a career in law as a practicing lawyer, that's what he was meant to do. So he stuck with it all of that time. In between, he did what he could until he qualified, right? And now he's doing very, very well as a lawyer. I know somebody else who went into law school, took the bar, and after they qualified, I had a conversation with them, and she says to me, I have done all of these things for my parents. This law degree and this practice certificate, they're for my parents. My passion is interior design. So I'm off to do interior design. And off they went. And that's what she does for a living. It is interior design, right? Was the law thing a waste? You might say, wow, all that effort, all that money, to come to naught. But I really think that because life is this pilgrimage, it's this journey, there is no such thing as a wasted experience. There's just experience. And all of those life's experiences make up who you are. And I think that, they all serendipitously come together to help you achieve the things that you are supposed to achieve, your assignments, if you like, on this planet. So you might start out with law. You might love it for the first 5 years, Maybe you might be advising commercially, or you might be doing disputes, you might be doing litigation, or you might be doing conveyancing. So you're, helping move land around and drawing up leases and all of those good things. All right. And then you might find, what, my interest in this particular area seems to be shifting. I would like to try something else. It's all right. It's okay to do that, right? You will take all of the experience that you've gathered and it will help propel you on the next leg of your journey. It might be that you're developing an interest for a different area of the law. That's okay. You might start out as, a disputes lawyer, and then you might be drawn to transactions, right? So that you do less of disputes and more of transactions. You will only know because you're actually in it and you are experiencing what you're experiencing. I think it's okay. And that's why I'm such a proponent for a continuous professional development. I do it all the time myself. I'm always learning. I'm always, sharpening my skills and adding new tools to my toolbox so that my offering, I'm a private practitioner, right? So, I have to stay ahead of the curve. My advices to my clients will take into account the cutting edge changes in that particular area that they're in, so that they won't be blindsided. They have, a razor sharp advisor, next to them. So continuous professional development is a good thing. But see, it may also inform you and tell you, you know what, we are not interested in what we've been doing. We want to try something else. And I am saying, baby lawyers, that that is fine. It might even be that, you know, you lose your spark. You just lose your passion for it. That's also okay. You know, that's the stage that you are at in your journey. That is fine. Some people will take a sabbatical year. They'll say, you know what, maybe I'm going to take up a course. Or I'm going to study. So, you know, I'm going to not practice maybe for a year or 2 years. I'm going to go off and learn something. It might be in the area of law. It might be something completely different. I want to take some time off. Now, you have to make those decisions responsibly, right? There are bills to be paid. You want to make sure that those things are taken care of. So it helps when you're a little bit organized and you know you're putting some things away, you make the necessary arrangements so that your life is not derailed as you reconsider your career choices, you know, and as you pivot maybe to something else. It might be that at the end of that period, your spark is reignited and you figure out, you know what? I still love the law. I still want to practice law. Maybe I want to do some things differently. You come back swinging, come back revived and refreshed. Or on the other side of that, you might find, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else. You know, I want to take pictures of birds and do books. You know, I want to author or I want to teach or whatever. I think it's okay. And you must give yourself the permission to do that. Lisa?
No, wow, excellent answer. I myself, I believe that I am a work in progress. You know, I'm always saying that, you know, what I'm doing now, even as fulfilled as I feel, it's not the end. It's but a maybe but a phase of the excitement. Maybe there's greater things to come that I'm gonna step into my fulfillment in an even more profound way. So I like what you said, that there's no such thing as a wasted experience. It's just experience. And when you're wanting to make that pivot, I think it's so important that you don't discount what's gone before. You say you gather up all those experiences, you gather up all those skills, all of the contacts, the colleagues, the growth that you might have experienced as a person mentally, and you move into what you want to do, but like you said, in a responsible fashion. So one thing I'm always having to advise the babies is that, sometimes, and it's the flip side is true, is that sometimes career progression has to be halted in favor of earning a living. So you cannot get into the bar, you cannot get into practical vocational training. Sometimes you got to pause that and say, right, I need to get a regular job because I need to earn money. Right? So there's that level of responsibility. Whether you're chasing the career in law or whether you are pivoting, there is that degree of responsibility. So as much as you want to switch over, and you get a lot of these people on LinkedIn that say, you know what, I now do this from the beach in Ibiza and all of those things. No, but there's a lot of responsibility. You've got to plan financially, things like that. But like you said, it's okay to shift. If you've got all those things in place, it's okay to shift, it's okay to move. And you might find law perhaps becoming a fatal attraction. Wherever you go, you can't shake it off. You might be in interior design like your colleague, or you might be in another field that's unrelated to law, and you find it sort of coming back like a boomerang, and that's probably a sign that you need to be part of something, or maybe in
Right.
the design industry, be part of lobbying for change in that area in terms of the law relating to that. So yeah, so that's a very 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 good wise answer there. And just to land the plane, we have like 2 minutes. Just give maybe your final thoughts, maybe for the new year, those that might be standing on a precipice. Maybe it's final year, maybe it's the first year, and they hate having to go back. Just maybe they're doing it for mom and dad, and they like not gonna go in second year. And maybe you
Right.
speak to those people, just motivate them to stay in law, and maybe also tell them it's okay to keep back if they need to.
Right. So for the baby lawyers, first of all, This is the end of the year. I don't know where all of you may be in your scheduling. It might be the end of an academic year. You might be transitioning, going into law school, or you're moving from one year to the next year. And I say this, I think I've said this on my LinkedIn page before, that I have always appreciated the fiction of transition from one to the other. I'm calling it a fiction because, as you know, um, the calendar system that we have is the convention, right? It's an innovation that we put together as human beings to just help us organize ourselves. So when you transition from 31st December to 1st of January, what has really happened, right? It's a fiction, but it's a useful one. I think it's a useful one because you can this is a good time to be taking stock. It's a good time for you to be thinking about, how has my year gone? Did I set myself some objectives at the beginning of the year? Have I achieved them? What have I not achieved? Why? What would I like to achieve? What can I do better? Those kind of questions, right? This is a useful season to be doing that. And, if you're thinking about perhaps entering law school, or you already are in law school, I'll tell you that even though I said it's okay for you to be feeling like you need to transition, all right? Or if you're feeling tired and fatigued and just saying, look, I want to move away from it. It's not a bad thing to have those emotions and to ask those questions. But what you also want to develop, and it's a skill that you need for the rest of your life, is some stickability, some perseverance, some endurance, seeing things through, starting things and finishing things. When you look at a resume or a curriculum vitae, and the candidate, and I look at them, quite often because, I get interns at the firm and, associates and things like that. And you see somebody who has been very mobile. They spent 6 months here and then another 6 months there, and then never quite held down anything longer than a year. It makes you a bit, if you're an employer, it makes you a bit nervous. Like, wow, what am I dealing with here? Is this a loose cannon or what? So, giving something some time, like I said, giving yourself some grace. I always say, when you're in doubt, stand still, right? Stand still. Maintain the status quo. If you're in doubt, don't shift things. Stay where you are until you're clear. So if you're not sure about law school, I would say stay in law school until you're clear that law school is not for you, right? If you're unsure about a course, pause, ask some questions, but stay there until you have better and clearer light. Law is a great career, my friends. It is actually a great career. I am grateful for everything that it has enabled me to do. It has given me a decent life and livelihood. I'm able to look after my family in a decent way. I get to travel every so often. I meet amazing, brilliant, wonderful people, all thanks to the fact that I chose a career in law. And it's not static. It opens up. I didn't do international arbitration from the get-go, but now I do. And that's also, it has opened up a whole new world to me. So it's all very exciting, my friends. It's very exciting. I would encourage you to persevere. Law school is not the easiest, but it can be done. Always think to yourself, if there are folks out there who have gone through this and finished it, ask them, or ask yourself, what color blood runs through their veins? I'm pretty sure you'll find that it's red. And then ask yourself, what color blood runs through your veins? I'm pretty sure you will find that it is red. And you have that in common. So if they could do it, I think you can do it too. So stick with it and celebrate the milestones. You come to the end of year like this, celebrate yourself, right? You made it, you did it. Maybe you didn't get everything right. Maybe you made some mistakes, some really silly mistakes. Cut yourself some slack and look forward to the new year with new opportunities, with new strategies, new resolves. Those things that worked, let them work. Let them continue working. Those things that didn't work, try and fix them. But enjoy yourselves. Have a good time. I wish you very, very well. Lisa.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing that I can sum it up with that I also practice is if there's stuff that you didn't get right, think of ways you can do it better, whether it's in your personal life, because I mean, we don't separate our lives. So whether it's as a student in your study methods, or maybe refining your career plan, or maybe being a better person, better partner, better parent, whatever you're doing now as a student, law student, or even if you're moving out into law school, the law school era, find something that you can do better next year. There's always something that we don't have to wait for the new year to make a resolution. If we can make the change from week to week, I think that's a very good practice to have. So, thank you so much, my friend. It was a very tasty episode. If you can understand the metaphor, the very potent episode. I think one bears listening to more than once. And of course, we have to have you again. So look forward to another invite in your inbox in the coming year, as I said, the schedule for
Anytime.
recordings. Yeah, because I think there's a lot of wisdom, especially you being ahead of me. So there's also things that I can learn from where you've traversed, and also as a fellow African, Africa has a lot of talent, and I think you are part of that, part of the fold in that respect. So I have a lot of respect, and of course, listeners, I hope that you will listen to this over and over. And if any feedback, give us a comment, you want to give us a review, we'd appreciate that. And of course, come back to the episode and most importantly, connect with our guests. So connect with Kaumbu, Kaumbu. Find him on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'll find a lot of wisdom there on a weekly basis, I would say. And yeah, it's just a good showcase of African talents. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a prosperous 2025, and don't forget to enjoy what's left of 2024.